Greetings, everyone. Here are the main points of today's video. The burning bridge trend, a game-changing turning point from Ukraine's raids. Deep raids into Russian territory have surged by 1,150%, shaking the rear areas. Ukraine is encircling Russian lines, expanding the wide area kill zone by another 30 kilometers. Fire rains down on Crimea, 7 Russian warplanes destroyed at Saki base in just 1 week. Welcome to the analysis program of Luan Bunch and Sue. Before we get into the content, I hope you can take a few seconds to like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue. Thank you, dear audience. A fiery bridgehead, Ukraine surrounds Russian lines, expanding the kill zone by another 30 kilometers. Ladies and gentlemen, a statement blunt but courageous. The bridgehead is burning, and that is inevitable. It's not just a slogan to guide public opinion, but a firm affirmation of the strategic importance of the medium-range strikes that Kyiv is carrying out. Ukraine has succeeded in a suffocating systematic campaign, shifting the focus and coldly and ruthlessly bringing the conflict deep into Russia's rear areas. This tactical shift is clearly illustrated through field reports from Brigadier General YFN Lasychuk, the heroic commander of the 7th Zero Road Assault Corps of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In an in-depth interview with the ZBC Ukraine news agency, this battle-hardened general confirmed that the warriors defending the homeland are intensifying unprecedented raids on the rear lines of the Russian army, launching long-range strikes that penetrate enemy defenses at depths of up to 100 kilometers from the front line. General Lasychuk emphasized that medium-range drones have now become standard weapons, representing both the present and the vital future of the Ukrainian army, with their scale and coverage density being significantly upgraded every day in all combat units. The mission of this weapon is decisive to the fate of the entire campaign, detecting and eliminating command centers and troop concentrations down to the last corner, and most importantly, completely blocking and controlling all Russian supply routes leading to the 2 vital strategic points, Tokos and Mizor-Nuris. Although the technical specifications and identities of these weapons are still shrouded in top-secret military secrecy, their devastating power on the battlefield is the clearest answer. The climax of this fierce epic was the firestorm that took place in a single night last week, when Russian defense reports admitted they had to withstand a fiery assault involving up to 660 drones sweeping across 12 vast territories, one of the largest airstrike campaigns since the Kremlin launched its all-out war in 2022. Those flight paths were not random or blind shots, but rather extremely precise military geographical calculations. The targets attacked were all critical economic and logistical choke points, from super oil refineries and oil and gas depots to naval warships and defense industrial complexes deep within Russian territory. This is a strategy to systematically drain the enemy's war economy, putting economic and political pressure on the Russian leadership to an unbearable level, and real data is proving that this tightening grip is more effective than ever. The tragic consequences of this strategy are no longer just dry reports on paper, but have deeply impacted Russian society, where independent media continuously record long lines of desperate and helpless vehicles waiting at fuel stations amid a severe crisis and shortage, harsh scenes that the local authorities always try to conceal. On the Crimea Peninsula, a strategic area annexed in 2014, the suspension of retail fuel sales has been officially enforced as the entire peninsula has been placed under a severe state of emergency. Faced with this harsh reality, even the Kremlin, a system that always tries to downplay losses to maintain resilience, can no longer avoid it. The clearest sign that suffocating pressure is weighing heavily on the Russian leadership is that President Vladimir Putin had to convene an emergency meeting over the weekend to directly address the alarming drop in the country's fuel reserves. Deep strikes into Russian territory have surged by 1,150%, causing shockwaves in the rear lines. The deadly confrontation is entering a new brutal phase as the once safe rear of the Russian Federation has officially collapsed completely. The miraculous surge of up to 1,150 deep strike operations achieved by Ukraine's unmanned systems forces has dealt a stunning blow to the defense industrial centers deep within enemy territory. These are no longer isolated harassment attempts. This long-range campaign has been elevated to an art of large-scale attritional warfare, systematically choking off the core resources that fuel the Kremlin's war machine. The actual figures paint a picture of dramatic change within just a short campaign cycle. Ukraine's drone pilots have carried out up to 2,359 deep strike missions, penetrating critical targets located between 500 and even up to 2,000 kilometers from the front line. These invisible swarms have penetrated deep, directly destroying and disabling 172 military facilities, heavy industry sites, and key energy complexes, shaking the very foundation of Moscow's rear defense doctrine. But along with those breathtaking strategic strikes at distances of thousands of kilometers, Ukraine's medium and short-range fire net has also drawn tighter with a level of destruction that is no less devastating. At distances from 150 to 300 kilometers, the counter-offensive forces have launched 3,406 medium-range sorties, striking and wiping out 1,682 of the enemy's tactical targets. Right near the front lines, within a range of 25 to 150 kilometers, another nightmare unfolded with 2,747 direct airstrike sorties, causing an additional 1,265 military targets to fall under the hail of bullets. The list of targets selected and prioritized by these forces reflects a cold but extremely precise military mindset, ranging from the defense industry, energy infrastructure networks, vital logistics hubs, to ammunition depots, command centers, heavy equipment, and Russian troop gathering points. In this all-out encirclement strategy, the Crimean Peninsula continues to be turned into a key target, isolated and relentlessly scorched, where coordinated attacks between unmanned units and other Ukrainian defense forces are constantly tearing apart strategic garrison bases. The list of damaged targets is solid proof of the impotence of Russia's air defense network against Kiev's smart swarm tactics. This deadly list names a series of major industrial complexes, from the Achakhan gas processing plant to massive oil refineries like Yudki, Afitsky, Novokui Byset, Slavyot, the Moscow refinery complex, and energy facilities such as Zegorod Nef under Segorod-Netel ZT of the Lukoil Group. Not stopping there, key defense transport arteries at Kapak Port, fortified naval infrastructure at Kronstadt, including Strategic Weapons Depot No. 15 of Russia's main missile and artillery directorate, Proud Fleet supply bases, and even a series of Russia's top-secret space communication centers have also suffered heavy losses. In fact, it speaks for itself with bitter tones as the iron wings carrying the flames of vengeance from Ukraine have brought the full brutality and pain of war right back onto the enemy's own territory. The entire European part of the Russian Federation now no longer has a single rear area that can be called peaceful. The intent behind these continuous strikes are aimed at a single purpose: to completely destroy the ability to supply troops, exhaust the economy, and crush the capacity to sustain a prolonged war effort. Amidst that tragic and heroic battlefield, the 413th Independent Drone Regiment with the Z insignia is an elite unit under the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces. Before stepping into the game at a strategic level, the soldiers of Regiment Z were already renowned across the front lines for their exceptional skills in operating FPV suicide drones. The Night Shadows known as Baba Yaga and their relentless hunts for enemy air defense systems. Now, some of the secrets have been partially revealed as the Supreme Command has begun to publicly mention Regiment Z as one of the spearheads carrying out the deepest strategic strikes into Russian territory. This is a glory that comes with extreme danger, following the painful losses suffered by Russian industrial and military facilities. Ukraine is surrounding Russian defenses, expanding the kill zone by 30 kilometers. The map of the conflict is being redrawn with streaks of fire as Ukraine demonstrates formidable military capabilities, with the ability to strike lightning blows at any coordinates across the entire territory of the Russian Federation. Areas once considered safe havens deep inside Russia are becoming alarmingly scarce. By proactively bringing the fire of war to targets deep within enemy territory through a series of strikes from short, medium, to long range, Kiev has turned the battlefield into a complex space where oil refineries, military supply convoys, weapons manufacturing facilities, and even Russia's strategic flying fortresses can no longer find refuge. This air-to-ground firestorm is essentially a classic airstrike campaign, although it doesn't use traditional fighter squadrons, but is instead carried out entirely by modified drones and advanced domestic missiles. The sophistication of Ukraine's tactics is demonstrated by the deployment of the Farmingo missile line, which directly attacked and disabled the Titan Barakati plant in Volgograd, one of the backbone centers for manufacturing air defense systems and strategic missiles for the Russian military. Not stopping there, the daringly codenamed operation took place earlier, when Russian strategic bombers were destroyed right at their base by camouflage drones, which were secretly transported across the border by trucks. The inevitable consequence is that Russia is facing a depletion of its defense infrastructure and a severe shortage of military supplies, even in remote cities thousands of miles away like Moscow or St. Petersburg. This unprecedented brutality is not only happening in the rear, but is also being condensed into tragic numbers on the front lines, where CSTS reports estimate that Russia has suffered a staggering 1.4 million military casualties since launching the full-scale war in 2022. The nature of traditional front lines has now been completely erased, giving way to a much harsher reality. In a groundbreaking interview with the GBC Ukraine news agency, Brigadier General Yevhen Moisak, a seasoned military commander and leader of the 7th Corps of the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces, candidly revealed a truth. The concept of the contact line and battalion-level rear areas from the early years of this war has now become history. The current front line is a deadly zone where the land has been torn apart, turning into a blazing gray area up to 20 to 25 kilometers wide. And the general predicts that this deadly belt will continue to expand to 30 kilometers before the end of this year. The horror of war intensifies even more when considering the total area of destruction, as the Russian military has also established a similar control zone, turning the battlefield into a deadly strip of land, stretching 50 to 60 kilometers wide. In this area of absolute control, every movement by both our forces and the enemy is exposed under a dense reconnaissance network, where a soldier's chance of survival depends entirely on electronic warfare equipment for protection or the ability to stay hidden underground. To minimize human casualties as much as possible in that deadly zone, Ukraine is urgently carrying out a technological revolution, a matter of life and death, completely removing humans from frontline logistics and replacing them with automated systems, including resilient ground robots and unmanned vehicles. Fire and blood rained down on Crimea, with 7 Russian warplanes destroyed at the Saki base in just 1 week. The Crimean Peninsula has long been a critically important strategic base, shaping the Kremlin's ambitions to maintain power in the Black Sea. But now this very land is becoming the focal point of a fiery siege campaign by Ukraine, under the direct orders of President Volodymyr Zelensky. A campaign to cripple deep strike capabilities lasting 40 days and nights has been launched, pushing the conflict to a new level of extreme tension. According to strategic reports, Ukraine's unmanned strike forces have reached a record range of over 2,000 kilometers from the national border, a figure that is enough to redefine the entire regional map. These are no longer just symbolic strikes, but a systematic effort, coordinated smoothly between multiple branches of the military, aiming to completely deprive the Russian army of its core resources. From communication hubs and secret spaces to key sea supply routes, they are exhausting the enemy's war machine, depleting both responsibility and fuel. The tragedy for the Russian aerospace forces on the southern front reached its climax with a series of devastating bombings raining down on the Sasaki airbase. The second strike, only days later, hit this fortified stronghold directly. The Ukrainian Security Service, SBU, orchestrated a highly sophisticated swarm drone attack, simultaneously neutralizing both critical strategic aviation sites, the Sasaki airbase and the Hrvatiaj airbase. At Sasaki, a fierce fire pierced through 7 fortified hangars, which house fighter jets and strategic bombers threatening the southern corridor, including Sukhoi Su-30, Su-30SM, and Su-24 aircraft, burning or severely damaging at least several fighter jets. Nearby, at the Hrvatiaj base, a series of explosions also leveled 2 massive hangars filled with long-range suicide UAV squadrons, along with a host of advanced aviation equipment, severing the long-reaching arms that frequently launched attacks on cities and supported Russia's coordinated offensives across the southern front. The collapse of air defense shields in Crimea is not simply a loss of military equipment, but the result of a coldly calculated strategy to wear down defense capabilities, orchestrated by the head of the Ukrainian Security Agency. The SBU leadership asserts that every successful special operation means the enemy's war machine loses a vital part, from aircraft and logistics vehicles to strategic warehouses and infrastructure supporting their campaigns. This suffocating pressure is being pushed to the maximum, strangling the enemy not only on the blazing front lines, but also reaching deep into the most remote rear areas, turning Russia's military command centers into exposed targets within the enemy's sights. Ukraine's unmanned systems forces have not stopped at the islands, but have spread like a firestorm, sweeping through 48 strategic targets, stretching from the Geysir Peninsula to Russian-controlled territories in Zaporizhia province. From the advanced Taz M2 air defense system being destroyed, to a series of transformer stations and gas compressor stations being blown up, the enemy's energy infrastructure is suffering severe damage. This massive offensive has crippled 11 giant oil refineries, 6 major defense industry factories, and 7 key fuel logistics centers, forcing many of Russia's large petrochemical facilities to shut down or fall into a state of severe paralysis. From the bloody wounds at the transport lines in Kapkak port to the distant Kronstadt-Kornstadtsa naval base, where Strategic Weapons Depot number 15 and the Proud escort ship were brought down by coordinated strikes, Ukraine is writing a dramatic new chapter, proving that no fortress is impregnable when the will to resist is weaponized with cutting-edge technology. So, in your opinion, should Russia withdraw its troops before being shattered by Ukraine?